Great. Well, welcome everybody for a special conversation this evening with Nick Lavery and David Guernsey with the Special Forces Charitable Trust. We're certainly thankful and grateful that you've each taken some time to be on with us conversationally, David and Nick, and we're looking forward to Nick hearing your story and your acts of service for our country. And so on behalf of those that are listening in, welcome. We certainly are grateful from the fact that we have people from number of cities and across the country. There's a lot of craziness going on in the world today, and we're just grateful that we can connect relationally. David, we appreciate you and your leadership over the trust. But Nick, we want to say thank you for your service, and we are so grateful for men like you. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Hey, David, if you could just take a moment and share with those listening in on this call today a little bit about yourself and the trust. We would love to get to know you.
I'm not as important as Nick. Nick's a great person. We really need to give as much time to Nick as possible on this. But I want to thank everybody for joining. We have some new people that really don't know what the trust is about, and we have some longtime donors. So I'm going to give sort of a cross flavor of what's going on. We are all remotely working. And we are also being able to carry out our mission. We have three main areas of buckets that we put our support in: education, motivation, family, community, and veterans and heritage. And last year we were fortunate to give about $1.9 million to the regiment from that standpoint. So I would ask you to go to our website, specialforcescharitabletrust.org. Sign up for our newsletter. We're doing obviously a lot of stuff with Zoom. We're doing a lot of stuff everybody's doing things differently. We're trying to do that as well. Next Tuesday is Giving Tuesday. They've moved it up from November. I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end, about what we're doing for that. And then I think one of the coolest things we accomplished on this past Saturday is we actually ordered 650 Domino pizzas, extra large, and deliver them to the single soldiers that were homebound in their barracks at Fort Bragg. And it just gave them a little bit of peace and reality, because as Nick can tell you, he can't leave, he can't go more than 50 miles unless the Secretary I think Secretary of Defense actually gives him permission to move. So everybody's kind of sheltering down. So that's all I want to say. Give it time to Nick. And
great. David, thank you. Of course, the trust is focused on serving for the Special Forces, them individually, as well as their marriages and their families and their needs of families while the men are serving in their role, and especially when they come back. I know there's a lot of programs as it relates to marriage retreats and family retreats and a lot of things once we come back to a normal state of affair. But Nick Lavery, thank you so much for taking some time to be with us tonight. Share with us a little bit about where you are and how you're serving currently.
Yeah, thanks, Steve, David. You guys just pointed out it's an interesting time for everybody, and we're finding ways to continue to be productive and do what we need to do, which is certainly a first for me, as I imagine it is for most people out there. Currently, I'm in my office, which at least cleaned up the background a little bit for you guys, which I've spent a considerable amount of time over the last month, more so than ever before. The DOD's mission, SF's mission, it doesn't stop regardless of what's going on in the world. But we have had to adapt and find ways to continue to get business taken care of, while also adhering to the safety protocols that have been put in place. So whether it's Zoom or whatever platform we've been using, we've been able to continue to progress moving forward. It certainly has put me as a leader on a detachment, my creativity skills to the test, because we're a very hands-on organization. I mean, when we train, we're out there running around doing stuff. And when you are no longer able to get together and train, how do you continue to progress? So it's brought about certainly the challenges, but we've also learned a lot on how we can continue to move forward when we have what we typically rely on taken away from us. It's a strange time. We are all eager and looking forward to getting back to the type of business that we are used to conducting. But it's been good, and team's solid. We're hungry to get back to work the way that we typically do it.
Well, Nick, this conversation tonight is Wednesday Stories with the Trust, and we want to hear your story. One, share with us, if you would, how did you become, and what was the motivation to becoming an active member of the service, and then your motivation to become in the Special Forces, and then your story, which is a very unique one, that you lost a leg a few years ago serving. Tell us a little bit about your background, your heart, and why you're serving in that event that took place a few years ago.
Yes, sir. So my desire to enlist, I had an interest as a kid, and I think a lot of young boys running around playing Army, playing Commando. I can still recall at that young age being drawn to it more so than maybe your average child. As things progressed, I got to my sophomore year of high school, and actually I met with the Marine Corps recruiter. I can still remember back in the day, the Marine Corps commercial guy climbs a mountain, pulls out a sword, takes down a dragon, and he snaps into that very nice, sharp-looking Marine Corps dress uniform. And at the age of 7 or 8, whatever I was, I'm like, oh yeah, I got to be that guy. That guy, that's the guy. So I was drawn to the service early. Met with a recruiter my sophomore year. He said, yeah, graduate high school and come back to me. So that was my original plan. In my junior year of high school, I started getting looked at to play football at the collegiate level. My senior year, that really took off. So I started getting all kinds of offers to play ball at college, which is something that I had zero interest in doing. I was not an academic back in that time of my life, but I did go to school to play football. I went to University of Massachusetts up in Lowell, Mass. Grinded out my degree painfully, but I did get that done. And towards the end of my college career, I began looking at enlistment options. So I went down to recruiter station again, downtown, and they had the Marines, the Navy, and the Army all in the same building. And I went Marine Corps first, and I asked about their special operations units and my ability to get into them. And they said, yep, you enlist as a Marine, and then you drop a request packet to go into one of our special operations communities. I said, great, I'll be right back. Went down the hall, talked to the Navy, had the same conversation about being a SEAL, got the same response. Walked down the hall, talked to the Army, and at that time, which is still available now, there's an option as a Special Forces recruit, known as an 18 X-ray contract, to come in off the street and have a shot to go straight into the Special Forces community. I was drawn to that. I felt like my physical skills at a minimum was best suited in a soft capacity. And I just wanted to be in a position where I could make as much of a difference as a single person could make. So that was kind of the buildup. And then, my sophomore year of college was 9/11. And, most of us can probably remember vividly where they were that day. That's no different for myself.
I know exactly where I was.
Yeah, it's one of those moments in time, man. I contemplated getting out of school right there and then because I knew we were going to war. I listened to some family, some mentors. They advised for me to stay and finish my degree, which I did, and then I went down that path. So eventually took that 18 X-ray contract, 2007, went straight in, made it through the 2 years or so of training, start to finish, to include basic training, airborne school, selection, all the other courses we got to do. And then I got to my first unit, which was at 3rd Special Forces Group out of Fort Bragg as a weapons sergeant. Kind of fast forward a little bit, on my second combat rotation to Afghanistan was when I got banged up a few times.
So what year was that? And Nick, what year was that you were in Afghanistan the second time? It was a calendar date, if you can remember.
Yeah, my second combat rotation to Afghanistan was late 2012. We went in September. I was injured late September the first time. I took some shrapnel to the back of my shoulder, blew like a lemon-sized hole. Wasn't a big deal. Managed to get patched up, got back into the fight, within a couple of weeks, or actually kind of less than that. Fast forward to November. One of our vehicles in our convoy hit an IED. We reacted. During that engagement, I took a AK-47 round to the face, just kind of grazed me. Got past that, patched back up, back into the fight. And then March of 2013, on the tail end of that same deployment, was when I was wounded almost critically, which ultimately resulted in the loss of my leg. And the broad details of it, was an insider attack. We were getting ready to go on what we would consider to be a routine mission, and one of our Afghan National Police counterparts opened up into our crew from about 15 feet away on a truck-mounted PKM machine gun. Ripped my right leg to shreds. I took a round to my lower left leg. Got some other injuries, all of which pale in comparison to how bad it could have been. We lost 3 team members that day. My detachment commander was killed. Our infantry squad uplift squad leader was killed, and our soft MPC working dog was killed. So, again, in comparison, this really isn't that big of a deal. My interest, and then just in broad terms, how I ended up losing the leg back in 2013.
You know, Nick, it's amazing to me, and courage and a boldness that, you know, you get a shot in the shoulder that's as big as a lemon and you lose your leg, and you say things like, it's not that big of a deal. Thank you for your bravery and the service that you provide for the safety of all of us. What was the emotion like when you recognize that event, you lose your leg? Obviously, there's a lot of pain and emotion that goes into that. How did you go through that? What was that like? And how did the trust kind of journey with you?
So in the onset of the event, without going into the gory details, just for time's sake, I was convinced I was dead. I knew my femoral artery had been severed. My training tells me I got maybe 8 minutes or so until I'm out of blood. I went into desperation mode. I managed to patch up myself and eventually stop the bleeding. But as I was laying there, relatively certain I was going to die, I was strangely content with that. You know, professional warriors, you know, we adopt this mindset prior to going into this type of mission. And it's that, you know, come back with your shield or on it kind of mentality. We go over there prepared to die. And this was the way it was going to happen. So if I was going down, this is the way I wanted it to be, surrounded by my brothers, prepared to give my life for the service to our nation. And I was fine with that. I can say I was also very frustrated just by the specific nature in which that happened. And I can remember laying there and just thinking, man, I taught that guy how to use that gun, you know, a couple of weeks ago, and he just shot me with it. So that was frustrating. After all the gunfights and the engagements I've been in up to that point, you know, to go down that way was just kind of annoying. But in the broader sense, I made peace with God and, you know, wished my family the best. And I was fine with that. As it would turn out, me being the stubborn SOB that I am, it wasn't my time. And then just kind of as things progressed linear emotionally, it was a roller coaster. And I really didn't go down into any kind of in a really dark place. Not that there's anything wrong with that or anything to be ashamed of if that were the case. It didn't really happen with me. As soon as I was off of enough drugs to realize my situation, I knew right then and there I was going to get back onto a team. And although I was surrounded by loved ones and teammates and my chain of command and I had everybody in my corner, and they played an enormous role in me being able to rehab and get back, it's a lonely place because I don't think really in anybody's mind they thought that it was possible. An above the knee amputee getting back onto an SF detachment to go back to running kinetic operations, you know, it hadn't happened before. So I find myself in kind of a lonely spot, which I was surprisingly comfortable. And it's just kind of part of the cost of ambition when you want to do something that's somewhat unprecedented. Is just so becoming comfortable with that, even though I had my now wife at the time was not, my family, my friends, my teammates, all right there supporting me. In the back of everyone's mind, it was kind of like, you know, I don't think this is going to play out. And I was able to acknowledge that, understand that. So it's been a journey. I can just say now that I've been back on the teams since 2015. So I was, from the time I was wounded to the time I got back to the team was just about 2 years. Since then, I've deployed now 3 times to combat as an amputee. And you know, now it's just life, man. You know, I wake up, I strap my leg on, I go to work. I don't look at myself any different than anybody else. And really, the guys that know me and the guys I work with, people I work with, they don't look at me any different than anybody else.
Well, Nick, I know that I'd love to ask you some questions as it relates to, marriage and family life. David, I think, is going to chime in here with a question, but, just to get my head around the fact that I wake up and pull up my pants, you wake up and put your leg on. It's just a different mindset. So thank you for that. David, you wanted to chime in here with a question?
So Nick's journey back is pretty remarkable because, as he said, he wanted to get back, and there was no, I don't know, Nick, if the right word, standard protocol. What do you have to do to get back? And so, Nick, you may want to talk about that. My opinion is every time he hit a level, they'd say, oh, well, he did that. Now let's see if he can do this. So you might want to talk a little bit about getting back in the team and then what that led to from a Special Forces, at least third group Special Forces. If you could do it, everybody needs to do it type of thing.
Yeah, David, you're absolutely right. There wasn't really a laid out pipeline for me to follow. It was just kind of thrown at me one thing at a time. And again, my chain of command, completely supportive on the surface. And I believe that they were praying and hoping for this, but I don't think that any of them really thought that they would have to get to a decision point on this at any real point in time. So it just started off basic, standard Army physical fitness test, standard 12-mile ruck march. I knock out those two things, and then it's okay. Maybe the head starts to turn a little bit. Okay, let's have them do this. And then I did that. Okay, let's have them do this. That process went on for almost just under 4 months in total. Physical evaluation, proficiency evaluations, psychological reevaluations. They wanted to ensure I could do the job, and I was an asset to the team. I wasn't a little kind of part of the emotional aspect of this. Early on, it was hyper competitive, very stubborn. No one's going to determine my future other than me. It was all about me getting back to do what I wanted to do. And as I began to progress, I eventually realized that there was a lot more going on around me that was more important than me. And I had to determine if me being there was an asset or if I was a liability, because it's about the guys next to you. It's not about myself. So I was grateful for my unit and USASOC throwing all these things at me. I wanted to be able to prove my abilities. I wanted it to be sure in everybody's mind, including my own, that that's where I should be. That's where I'm best suited to be. And at the conclusion of over a dozen different types of events and assessments, it was determined that I can go back. The final evaluation, physical evaluation that first 3rd Special Forces group built, which has since spread laterally across USASOC. I was the first amputee to pass it. And since then, they made the decision, well, hey, if we're going to have our most severely injured guys do this assessment, which was originally built specifically for wounded warriors trying to get back onto a team. If we're going to make these guys do it, we should make everybody do it. So about a week or two after I was given the green light, the notification came down that this would be an annual requirement for every 18 series, as well as anyone that's set to go into a leadership position on a team had to pass the same evaluation to the same standard.
Well, I would have asked a question, how did your team embrace you? But I think that's a given, that you were the first amputee to go through the training, pass all the appropriate milestones, and you were embraced by your team. Nick, if I understand correctly, are you a grandson of also a grandfather that served in World War II? So being a part of the military is a part of your family legacy. Is that correct?
I do have a couple family members that served. My grandfather did serve World War II era, tail end of that. I had an uncle that was in the Navy for a little bit. I don't really come from a robust military family, although now my family are amongst the most patriotic people on the planet. For obvious reasons, but just kind of looking back when I originally told them, and at that time I was 24 years old. I just graduated college. I was a full-grown adult. Hey, Ma, Dad, this is what I'm going to do. They were really against it, to be honest with you. We didn't, again, not a military family. They were kind of confused. We were at war, a lot of concerns, fear, etc. Obviously, very proud of all this stuff. So, interesting paradigm shift over time. And I'm a father now to a 3-year-old boy, and You know, if he decides to get the bug the same way I did, you know, maybe the Lavery family military tree will just kind of grow down. We'll see.
Nick, that's awesome. Give us a quick snapshot. I want to get to you and your wife in a second. Give us a snapshot to the best that you're able and that you can share. Right at this moment, the Special Forces, SF, they're serving in about how many different countries, different hotspots? You know, the world is shut down. Our country is slowly, you know, coming out of hibernation, but the military hasn't stopped. Give us a quick snapshot of how the troops are serving us right now.
Yeah, so Special Forces, just in particular, regardless of what's going on in the world, global pandemic, outright warfare, anything in between, the United States Army Special Forces is always busy, and we're always deployed. And a lot of that has to do with the broad range of mission sets that we're expected to be able to perform. You know, the Green Beret is kind of a way I kind of sum it up is we're not experts in much, but we're very good at most. So we're kind of the special operations force, most requested soft element within SOCOM, coming out of the theater special operations commands around the world, which are the entities that request a specific tool to solve a specific problem. SF detachments are overwhelmingly at the top of that demand, and the supply just doesn't exist for us to facilitate all the things that we're asked to do. And I think that's really kind of twofold. One, again, that multi-tool aspect. You can send in a 10 or 12 man SF detachment anywhere in the world, and we are spun up on cultural sensitivities, language skills, and we really make our money on our training ability. So we're force multipliers, right? We work primarily conducting unconventional bilateral partnered operations, which is a lot of words to say. We go places, we find people that live there, and then we get them into a place where they can do the job for themselves. So that force multiplication aspect in today's world is very well and very well highly desired. The climate right now has never been lower to American life at any point in time, and that'll probably continue to progress that way. You know, one wounded soldier, one soldier killed in action. It's all over the news, everywhere. No one wants to see that. So how do you avoid that and also still accomplish all these missions? Well, you send in Special Forces detachments who go in at a very small signature, very small footprint, and they're able to expand that network out drastically, conduct the operations as necessary, while also moving ourselves further and further and further away from the conflict. So very busy organization. The demand is not going to go away anytime soon. Unfortunately, and this is the way it has to be, you know, the supply can only be what it is, because you can't mass produce soft. That's one of our soft truths. The standards have to remain at a high level, so you're going to get a high attrition rate. So SWCC, you know, our student command, is churning out personnel as fast as they can, but we'll never catch up to all of the requests that come down the pipe, just because of, again, the vast array of problems that we are designed.
I think we're losing Nick a little bit. Oh, there we go. Nick came back. Nick, in the couple of minutes that we have left, share with us, what was that conversation like with your wife when you lose your leg, you go through recovery, you're healthy again, you go through rehab, you start your training. What was that conversation like with her when you said, I want to get back out in the field? What were those conversations like between the two of you?
Emotional, in short. So my wife is active duty Army as well. When I was wounded in 2013, she was also deployed. She had a front row seat to the entire event, as well as the 2 times I was wounded previously. Neither of she liked at all. So she's a warrior. She's been in the community longer than I have. So she's a warrior. She gets it. at that time, we weren't married. We were together, and she was obviously a very big part of my decision to move forward with what I was going to do. She was supremely supportive, but then also at the same time nervous and scared, just like the rest of my family. They want to support me in what I'm trying to accomplish, but they just saw me on the verge of death. So, it's a double-sided coin. We went back and forth a lot. Overwhelmingly, she was there for me, as she still is today. She is my number one source of motivation and strength and inspiration. So, being a dual military couple, it has a lot of upsides. We speak the same language. You understand things that your average civilian wouldn't understand. The downside is we're both very busy. So we have to really just take advantage of the time we have together. And, one of the things that the SFCT does is their resiliency retreat or weekend. And my wife and I have been on several of these retreats. They're phenomenal. It's an unbelievable thing. And the first time someone mentioned it, you go on this marriage retreat thing. I'm like, no, my marriage is fine. I don't need to go on a retreat. Like, no, stop. Like, go check this thing out. It's worth it. So we did. I was kind of reluctant about it. Like, this is probably a waste of my time. But okay, fine, we'll go do it. Unbelievable experience, right? Whether your marriage is in shambles or you're flying on all cylinders, events like that are worth every bit of their weight in gold. So we look forward to those types of events. And again, our time together is usually very limited. So when we get a chance to explore something like that, I can't express the impact that has on the home front, which, hey, you can be the baddest warrior on the planet, but if things at home aren't in line, you are not going to be productive conducting business. So it's a balance that needs to be maintained, a critical, delicate balance. And events like that just help you tip that thing into your favor, get things right at home, and then you're able to focus on the work at hand.
Yeah. Nick, amen. Hang with us just for a second. David, Nick was describing the marriage retreat. If you would, just take a moment or two and share a little bit about how the trust serves marriages and families of the troops, as well as other family needs. Maybe you could just touch on that before we wrap up.
Okay. I would say that the marriage retreats that Nick talked about, these 3-day resiliency, we've renamed it Moxie and Metal and did a lot of research. It really gets the family away. We go about an hour away from wherever the group is. We bring in professionals. We bring in people that the chaplains work very, very hard on trying to deliver programs, but we're able to bring people from the outside that they just don't have access to. And we've been doing some surveying, and the reports back is we're hitting on our metrics. I'd say that we're in the 85 to 90% of each of the speakers, the tools they give them to deal with these deployments and redeployments, that they're actually trying to use them. So that's our signature program. We do a few other things. We do spousal scholarships, which there's not a lot of money for spouses. We do a lot of organizational week things. Org weeks are very important for each group. Org week is short for organizational. They kind of stand down a little bit, and they kind of reflect on the year, and they have a ball, and they have some fun, and kind of, if they can, shut life down for a little bit. So we try to help that out. But that's kind of what on a thumbnail sketch that we try to do.
Great. Well, David, thank you. On behalf of the Trust, for me, I'm just a lead ambassador. I'm a champion and a fan of the Trust and how you're serving the SF families. And Nick, thank you. There's a song that I really love because I got to be on tour with him for a while by Zach Brown, which is "Salute those that serve for the things that we love." So salute to you. Thank you for your service, and thank you for being with us this evening. And we appreciate those that have been on this call and this conversation. We'll be back next week for an additional weekly Wednesday stories. But in the meantime, Nick, thank you so much for taking time to be with us. And David, thank you for being a champion and doing what you're doing on behalf of the Trust.
You're welcome. Next week is a third Special Forces Group wife, Megan McConnell. And she's going to talk about what it is to be a SF wife. We have a little saying around here that says, in a military family, we all serve. She's not in the Army like your wife is, Nick, but she's in the fight just like everybody else in that family. So that's going to be the focus of next week's talk.
Yeah, fabulous. Thank you. Well, God bless. And of course, couldn't not say God bless America as well. So Nick, thank you for your service. And everyone, thank you so much for being on. And David, have a great evening. Appreciate you.
Take care. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.